Hello everybody, good morning. Today we're gonna move on into chapter 2, which is conceptual data model, okay, or sometimes we term them as ERD, okay. ERD stands for entity relationship diagram, okay. Right, so in this lecture you're gonna learn what is entities, what is relationship, what is attributes, and what is the whole ER diagram. ER diagram means the entity relationship diagram. Okay, so when you want to design a database, there are two methods or two approach for you to use. There are top-down approach. There is another approach which is bottom-up approach. You can use any of this approach because some people prefer to use the top down approach, but some people also prefer to use the bottom up approach. Okay, you're gonna learn on these two approaches, but for today the ERD entity relationship diagram falls under top down approach. Top down approach means you don't have any data yet, okay, you are looking at a database conceptually, mean from general to specific. So it means that top down approach, okay, from top to down, it means that from general to specific. This means what? This means general means you will be identifying the entity first, and then up to the specific means you are looking up to the data. Okay, but you will have to think of the tables first, right? Whereas the bottom up approach, it comes from specific to general. Okay, it means that in this case there will be some situation where you have the data, okay, but you don't have the database yet. Okay, so sometimes your boss will come to you and say, okay, Adam, take this file of data, maybe manual file of invoices, of forms, right? I want you to create a database to store this information. Okay, so for this case you may want to think of bottom up approach because you have the data and you have to arrange the data in proper tables, in proper groups, so then you will be able to draw the CDM or ERD. Okay, right, so for today we're going to look at the top down approach first. Alright, so this is actually the level of database data model. First and foremost, usually you will get the requirements. Means people, when you need to develop a database, it must come from system. So usually your counterparts, your team members or from other module will come to you and say, okay, please develop a database for this system, and they will give whatever data that they want to store and so on. Okay, and then it's your part to develop the system, to develop the database. So there are three levels of database: conceptual model, logical model, and physical model. Okay, let's look at logical. Okay, conceptual. Conceptual CDM is conceptual data model, yeah. Conceptual data model. Okay, so conceptual data model, you just have the entity, okay, and another entity. You learn this in next slide, don't worry. You just want to show the difference between the levels, right? So you have the entity, and you have one attribute. Okay, you have one attribute where this attribute we call that PK, right? Alright, moving on into logical data model. Logical, you expand this level, the CDM level, into, it means that you still have the same entity. Let's say this entity 1, entity 2, entity 1, entity 2, you have the relationship, and you still have that PK, okay, and you will add on other attributes. You will learn on what are the meaning of attributes later on. Okay, PK you have other attribute. So that is logical data model. Moving on to third level, which is physical data model. Physical, yeah. So this level, actually you are looking at most similar to what you see in the database itself. It means that you still bring the entities that you have created, that you have bring on from conceptual to logical. You still follow sorry, in this case the third level, you have to draw it a different way, right? Sorry. Okay, so you still have the table. We are drawing at this. Okay, so this is entity 2, this is entity 1, the same thing. Attributes, you will be still following the same attribute. Let's say this is attribute 1, 2, this is 3, yeah. Attribute 1, attribute 2. Okay, so this is attribute 3. What you enhance in this PDM is actually you assign the data type for each of the attributes. So this attribute PK, maybe you say integer or number. Attribute 1 is text. This is text. Okay, maybe this is date, for instance. All right, so these are the 3 levels actually originated from CDM, right? Then you extend or expand this diagram into a more detail where you add on other attributes, and last one is actually you add in the more details, right? Okay, right. So what is ERD, right? So in entity relationship diagram is a picture showing the relationship between entities, right? Right. Okay, now ERD. Okay, what is ERD? It is basically a picture showing the information created, stored, and used by business system. Basically, ERD shows the relationship between entities. Relationships between entities. Alright? Right. Okay, so but then what is entity? Okay, so entity is anything. It can be anything. Okay, it represent objects, right? It represent objects. It represent any things of interest. It can be physical things such as student, lecturers, employees. It can be abstract things such as courses, orders, and it is noun. Okay, and just one tip, to identify whether that is entity or not, you have to think of any data that you want to store. So that data you want to store, you want to group into what group, so that can be considered as entity. It's just that one rule. Okay, if you have one record, you need not create entity. Okay, it is more than one record, okay, then yes, create entity. Because if you have only one record, why must you waste the capacity of your workstation to create entities? So entity is actually what? Is actually table. So that's why come back again to relationship between entities. It means that relationship between tables. That is why in previous class, when I asked you to identify tables, right, in the tutorial 2, I mentioned that they have to be related. Because remember when I said, when you create a database, when you have many tables inside, these tables have to be related. Okay, you cannot say that you have lecturer, student, suddenly you have menu table. It doesn't jive, it isn't related. Okay, but if you're saying you are creating a database for restaurant, yes, you can have menu, one table on menu, one table on ingredients, maybe one table on a chef, maybe, and so on. So you have to make them related, right? So when you say ERD, it is relationship between entities. It means that relationship between tables, right? And please take note, it is usually noun, kata nama. Okay, so in this example, it says that they created one entity on customer. It means that they want to store data about customer. They also created one entity on part-time employee. It means what? They want to store information about part-time employee. Okay, so okay, entity is drawn in this shape, and you name the entity inside. Okay, so for example, you want to create entity named student, so you have to name the student. The case doesn't matter, and you should put it in this shape, right? Okay, oh sorry. Alright, so in an ER diagram, an entity usually is drawn in a box, okay, and it is labeled. Okay, right, next that you have to learn on is number 1 is entity. This is the elements of ERD. So if you are asked to draw an ERD, make sure you have all of these elements. Okay, so number 2 is attributes. So what is attributes? Right, so attributes is drawn in this shape, and name that attributes. Let's say name. So what is attributes? Attributes, okay, let's look at this. Attributes are the facts, aspects, properties, details about the entity. You can say that it is the characteristic of an entity. Okay, alright. For example, table student have ID, student have name, student have course, student have address. That can be considered as attributes. Or modules have codes, titles, credit, weights, levels, and so on. Okay, so attribute have a name, alright, and attribute is usually noun. That doesn't matter actually, as long as attribute shows the characteristics of an entity. Alright, so you can say that if you are looking at table, because entity is table, right? Okay, field, this is field 1, field 2, field 3. This is data already, right? This is data already. So you can consider field, this one, as attribute. Okay, or in bahasa pasar, normal word, normal term, they call that header of the table. Okay, right, so let's say we have table student, yeah, table student. So you can say that attributes of student are what? Student got Segi ID, student got name, okay, student got age, okay, maybe hometown. Okay, so these are the possible attributes. So how will you draw that? So draw a entity, name the entity. Okay, draw the attribute, Segi ID, name, age, hometown. Okay, right. Okay, please remember the third element. Never mind, it's okay. The third element is, right, this is the look of the attributes. Alright, we'll look on this one later. Right, relationship. Okay, what is relationship? Relationships are association between two or more entities. Association means link, right? So it means that relationship means a link between entities. Alright, so that's why I said just now previously that when you want to create a database, it has to be related, because you have that one term relationship. Okay, relationship. Okay, and relationship, you have to name the relationship, and the shape is diamond, and name the relationship inside here, name the name of the relationship, right? So let's look at student just now. So we have student, we have ID, student ID, we have name, student name, we have age. Okay, forget that hometown lah. Oh, never mind lah, just put hometown. Okay, So have to padam here because I need to draw the relationship. So let's draw that H here. Okay, so an entity or ERD is a relationship between entities. So student, you want to show who are the lecturer that teach that student. Okay, you create another entity here and you join them with a relationship. Name the relationship because this shape is small. I'm going to put it this way, but you are supposed to name the relationship inside the diamond. Okay, so student is taught by, right? So relationship, you usually use verb. Okay, the action verb, provide, use, make, and so on. Okay, so lecturer, what are the attributes of lecturer? Maybe name, maybe ID, staff ID, and so on. Okay, so you have entities, you have relationship, you have attributes, right? So far so good. Okay, now let's look back at the types of attributes. There are 4 types of attribute. Simple attribute means each entity has a simple atomic value. Atomic value means one value per attribute. So one cell, one value. You cannot have one cell. You cannot, right? So this is one cell, right? You cannot put 2 values. Okay, y1, y2. No, it has to be atomic, one value. Right, that is simple attribute. Composite attribute may be composed of several components. For example, address, postcode. Yeah, postcode. Okay, postcode, for example. Okay, when you know the postcode, okay, you can know the city, you can know the town, okay, street, for example, okay, by looking at the postcode. So this is what it means by composite. One attribute can also be composed of several attributes, several components. Alright, multi-valued means, okay, multi-value entity may have multiple values for that attribute. For example, color of previous degrees, colors of car, and so on. Okay, you have many colors and you have many skills and so on. Derived means the domain value can be determined from another attribute. It means that you have one attribute, okay, you have one attribute, okay, let's say date of birth. Okay, date of birth, okay, one attribute. But from this date of birth, you can also know age, looking at the year 5. So this is what the meaning of derived means, that this attribute age, we call that this is derived attribute. Okay, this attribute is derived from this another attribute. Or maybe you want to see example of amount. This is most common use, amount. Okay, attribute. Okay, sometimes students create one field on amount, but somehow you do not need amount if you have another attributes on quantity that you buy, and also you have the unit price for every product price. So if you multiply this one and this one, you will get the amount. Okay, so you can see that this amount is also a derived attribute. Okay, right. Okay, this is just example of nested attributes. From one attribute, you have their attributes. From that attribute, you can have other attributes as well. Right, this is relationship. Okay, back to relationship.